It is 1 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. Multiple reports confirming that the Robert Woods trade is not official. That is according to Over the Cap, because the LA Rams are picking up his roster bonus. That will save the Titans $3.5 million in cap space. Another quick NFL news. Former Packers outside linebacker Zadarius Smith has signed with the Minnesota Vikings. Earlier today, it was the New Orleans Saints bringing back QB Jameis Winston on a 2-year deal. That deal on Monday, rather, it was today that Leonard Fournette announced he will remain in Tampa Bay, signing a 3-year contract. And if you missed it on Monday, the newest quarterback in the AFC South is former Falcon Matt Ryan. The Colts acquiring Ryan in a trade, sending Atlanta a 2022 third-round pick, and that leads to Marcus Mariota reuniting with Arthur Smith on a 2-year deal with the Atlanta Falcons worth over $18 million. The Preds will stay on the West Coast tonight, a 9:30 puck drop at the LA Kings after last night's 6-3 win over the Anaheim Ducks that saw Philip Forsberg assist 3 times and score twice to officially break the single-season franchise record for goals. Victor Arvidsson's mark was 34. Forsberg scores his 35th goal of the year last night, and this just 2 days after breaking David Legwand's goal on Saturday of career goals with the franchise. Matt Duchene also moves his tally up to 34 on the season. Coming up tonight, Vanderbilt basketball's postseason run continues in the NIT quarterfinals. An 8 p.m. tip-off at Xavier. The winner will move on to the semifinals in Madison Square Garden, and will play the winner between St. Bonaventure and Virginia. Vanderbilt tonight will be playing maybe with a new logo, as at VU Commodores on Twitter announced it. A new logo for Vanderbilt Athletics. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Blaine and Mickey on 104.5 The Zone. Blaine is here today.
Yeah,
I'm about to say you're out
today.
again today. I don't know
I
what
was out yesterday, and then I resumed halfway through.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Hey, he's speaking it into existence. See what he's doing there?
The thing is, it's just when I get out of regular football season, my mind is just kind of a whatever.
Oh, man.
Rhett Bryan in for Mickey Ryan, who is out again today. Blaine's always here. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but hey, we're ready to drive it for a couple of hours here on 104.5 The Zone. We got Ryan Callahan at Go Vols 247 to talk about the newest 5-star quarterback recruit in Nico Iamaleava. Say it for me again.
Iamaleava.
Thank you. Iamaleava. I usually am pretty good with poly names, but I'm having a...
Well, I got 1 year to practice this, so,
Iamaleava.
I don't have to say it too often. I'm just called Nico.
And spring practice started today, so we want to get his observations on some newcomers there. Position groups may be shaping up. But Iamaleava is from Long Beach Polytechnic High School, same place where Jarrell Casey went, where Jayon Brown went, Snoop Dogg.
Doggy Dog.
Cameron Diaz. I mean, there's a bunch of famous people. Billie Jean King went to school there.
Oh,
but that's where he's from, and is committed to the University of Tennessee. So we'll talk to Ryan Callahan about that. And then in the 2 o'clock hour, it's the Mac Attack. Coach Dave McGinnis at 2:20. And I want to get in with him and ask him about maybe not necessarily nationally or league-wide, but how the draft stuff is changing with some of the things that the Titans have done in free agency, and maybe, some of the other teams that have addressed some things of need in free agency, and what that shifts their focus to the draft in now that are a week and change into free agency. And I think you'll start seeing the waves get smaller in this. Zadarius Smith, the former Packer and Raven, is a 3-year deal with the Minnesota Vikings today for $42 million. Leonard Fournette re-signs with the Buccaneers for a 3-year deal. We saw Marcus Mariota go to Atlanta yesterday, and Marcus ended up getting pretty good money out of that. It was a 2-year deal worth $18.5 million, I think.
But what I saw when I looked at the numbers, it's really a 1-year deal. They can get out of it. No different than a lot of people are talking about Aaron Rodgers in a 3-year, $150 million. They can get out of it. He has a roster deal due on the first league day of that next year, of this next coming year after the season. So he actually, whether he retires, they could trade him, or they don't give him the money, then he's out there to go wherever. He can get out of that contract after 1 year, or they can.
I think that's the misconception.
I thought it was like a 3-year deal,
Sure,
that was done.
sure.
But not. So I was thinking that they were going to trade Love, thinking Rodgers would be there for 3 years over the next couple of years.
But
now
maybe
when
hang
I look
on to Love now.
no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. That's
and that's
what
the
it looks
misconception with a lot of these. You see what's reported with the monies that are at its full value and all these years. A lot of times, a 4-year deal is a 2-year deal.
Right.
A 3-year deal is really a 2-year deal with a back option, or a 2-year deal is a 1-year deal. And, it's about the guaranteed money. That's what it is. When you see those numbers, like, okay, that's some bucks right there. Like with, what Cleveland did with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, that's where agents come into play, because on that period of time, you get money, millions of dollars. That way they're committed to you up front. If not, then they're going to cut you. If not, they could wait all the way to the end and right before the season starts and cut you, and you have no idea. And then all the market is saturated up, and then now you don't have as much options. You'll end up somewhere if you're a starter, but you won't get the money that you deserve. So,
and that's why you'll see some guys that are in better favor with their teams. The team will let them out so that they can explore the market as a favor.
What does that
to help
actually
him.
mean? Better favor?
What I'm saying is some teams have a little more animosity towards their players, I think, in terms of if relations aren't that great, and maybe they let them out a little later out of the gate. Whereas most of the time you see where, someone has a decent relationship with the player and think enough of him, hey, listen, let's let him go so he can go find.
Well, everybody talks about being a professional and a pro, but then why can't they be the same thing by the organization? Whether you like a player or not, or how he handles it, obviously you liked him enough to sign him.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't matter. Actually, I would want him out of my facility sooner than later than trying to, let's say, some form of blackballing. They take him out. They'll figure it out. And, by the way, guess what? We'll go to compound. We talk to everybody. We can tell them what he's about the person.
Yeah.
So, that's always interesting. So I don't know if we see that as much.
No, I don't. I
but
think it's
still
more,
goes on. It still goes on, no doubt.
I think most.
To me, that's kind of a college mindset. Like, that's interesting, because then we just talked about, everybody's talking about Baker Mayfield, right? All right, he's acting like a little wimp and going on Twitter and everything. Not being a pro's pro. Not like like Matt Ryan. Well, then we got to hold that same standard for the organizations, regardless of what the player is doing or not. You could be upset at him because, he got suspended, or you don't like he was never on time to meetings, but you didn't blast him, verbally to the media. So there's things you can do to punish him. Outside that, to me, if you don't like a player, hey, good riddance, move on, and hope you for the best for you. Keep it going.
And for Baker's, for the edification on Baker, he's done enough to hurt himself.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It'll
Yeah.
catch up with you at some point in time.
While we're talking players and money and those things, we know that over the weekend, John Robinson sent a 2023 6th-round pick to the Los Angeles Rams for wide receiver Robert Woods. Per Jason it over the cap, and then confirmed by our friend John Glennon that we had on the show yesterday, Robert Woods, the Rams pick up his roster bonus, saving $3.5 million for 2022 for the Titans. That leaves just a $10 million base salary for the Titans going forward for Robert Woods. So that extra $3.5 million, that dime was picked up by the Rams. So
yeah, another great job by John Robinson.
Yep.
Now, does he have a roster bonus, as we were just talking about, going to after this season?
He probably does. Season? I'd have to look that up, but I'd say
just to make
sure. Guys that usually get pretty good extensions like that usually have some kind of a roster bonus or something due within the first few days of the new fiscal year each year. That's the reason why a lot of these, you see these a lot of cut prospects, just because that's put in there as, for lack of a better term, a poison pill, so that both sides will talk again, to go forward. And if nothing is bargained back and forth between the two parties, between the franchise and the player, then maybe they make decision to part ways or whatever. But yeah, I think a lot of those are built that way.
Back to the point. Now, the situation we're talking about, about teams hold on to guys and waiting to late, that is actually the total opposite of what actually Julio can't be released until June. They just put it out there that he is released. Is that correct or not correct? How does that work?
I think he's
because of how
he's
he would hit on the
released, but it's a June 1st designation in terms of the monies and how the dead cap money goes for the Titans.
Right. So why didn't they just wait till June 1st to release him?
I guess so they could go ahead and free up some of the money now.
Is that how it works? Because if it doesn't go into effect until June 1st, then why don't you just wait till June 1st?
I guess because
I'd never heard of that
You
before.
can make that designation with the league now, and they know how to divvy up the money.
Right.
Part of it
It
this
frees
year
up
and
the
part
cap,
of it.
but he also then officially is not released until June 1st, or is
No,
he?
he's released.
Okay.
Yeah, because the
Okay.
Titans put out the official release the other day, so he's free to sign. He's a free agent, and because he's a vested veteran, he can talk.
What was the way
wherever
they
he
presented
wants.
that out with everybody reporting it? I was just like, well,
It's confusing.
I've never
believe me.
heard anyone talk about it. You're released, but even
Same
though,
thing happened with Austin Hooper.
right?
Because they had a post June 1 designation on that, but here he is. He signed as a Titan. So the
Right.
same thing applies with the Julio Jones. He can sign wherever he wants. It's just how that money is designated per
Goes
the
back to the
capologist
cap.
with the league. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Titans are going to be hiring me really soon to do the cap because I would just blow that out the water.
Dude, I'm from Rutherford County and have.
What's that mean, man?
I don't have a great math education.
Oh, well.
And that's I'm not slighting Rutherford County
Once
schools.
you
Don't
get
get me
past
wrong.
10, though, it kind of gets rough for me.
Yeah, I'm just,
Double digits.
Why do you think I'm sitting behind a microphone and I'm not a bean counter or a mathematician?
Well, guess what? We both sit behind this mic. So,
I'm just speaking on my part.
so we're both here.
On the way with Blaine and Mickey, as I mentioned, Ryan Callahan from Go Vols 247. He will talk about Nico Iamaleava, the new 5-star quarterback prospect who is committed to the Vols, and it's the first day of spring practice with the Vols and Josh Heupel. We'll get his observations and how some position groups are shaping up on the hill in Knoxville. That is on the way when Blaine and Mickey continues right here on 104.5 The Zone. Blaine and Mickey, 1045 The Zone. I am not Mickey Ryan. I'm Rhett Bryan from Titans Radio, but Blaine Bishop, the hitman, is right here with me. And on the line, we have Ryan Callahan at Go Vols 24/7. You can find him on Twitter at Ryan Callahan 247 to talk about the Big Orange. Ryan, let's go to the hot topic first. Nico Iamaleava is the Long Beach Polytechnic High School quarterback, 5-star recruit. And Vols Nation rejoices because they've got a big prospect there. What has it been like on your end in observation and what this does for the recruiting profile for a Josh Heupel and beyond?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of excitement about this. Assuming he signs and assuming the rankings don't change much, which I would not expect him to fall out of 5-star range, but assuming he stays there, he'd be the first 5-star quarterback to sign with Tennessee since James Banks back in 2002. So they've had some highly ranked quarterbacks since then, guys like Jarrett Garantano and others, but none quite at this level. And obviously, just in terms of the impact, the potential impact to the program, you could certainly make the case that this is one of Tennessee's biggest recruiting wins ever. The recruiting has changed so much. And since really the days when Tennessee was regularly winning these types of battles, that there have been other top 5 players that have signed with Tennessee. Eric Berry, Bryce Brown in 2009 under Lane Kiffin. There have been some other big time wins, but for what it means for where Tennessee's been the past decade and just how competitive it is to get these big time prospects these days, especially at quarterback, this is a potential program changer for Tennessee, and I think people understand the significance of that, especially in year 2 under Josh Heupel, just what this could do to kind of springboard the rest of this recruiting class. And if he lives up to the hype on the field, obviously what he could do for Tennessee in terms of just wins and losses himself. So huge deal and naturally a ton of excitement as well there should be. Time will tell if he lives up to the hype, but there's a lot of reasons to think he's the real deal and kind of a generational talent.
One other thing for me in regards to this big prospect, how much is the NIL factory that they've basically assembled there and partnered with had to go into consideration with this? Because you hear that he's going to get a large NIL deal, and obviously that's the new landscape of college football.
Yeah, certainly the whole report from The Athletic came out recently, indicating that unnamed player had signed a deal for several $1 million over the next few years. I don't have any confirmation that was Nico Iamaleava, but obviously there's been a lot of speculation about that, at least a lot of talk about that possibility. I'd put it this way: any big time prospect right now, with the NIL landscape having already blown up into a pretty big deal for some players, I think that's at least part of the decision-making process. Now, does that mean that's who got that deal and that's how, something that played a big role in Tennessee landing him? I don't know about that, and I certainly don't know that we'll ever hear any confirmation of who that player was, because all those NIL deals are pretty much private, and no one's required to reveal anything. So, but I think he's the type of player who knows there's money to be made anywhere he goes, because he's going to be a high-profile guy. And Tennessee, I think, has been pretty competitive in the NIL world so far. I think they've gotten off to a good start there. The Spire Sports Group has organized well and done a lot of work to fundraise already, and feels like they're in a good spot. And as we've talked to people around the country, it seems like Tennessee is one of the schools that's gotten off to the best start with that, and kind of figured out how to navigate that world as everyone kind of figures it out on the fly. But no doubt Nico is the type of player who is going to make money wherever he goes, and especially if he lives up to the hype on the field. But as for how much that had to do with his decision and things like that, I think Tennessee deserves a lot of credit, beyond anything on NIL front. I just think they did such a good job hosting him on his 2 visits over the past several months. And his family, his mother included, fell in love with it when they were in Knoxville a couple weeks ago on his latest visit, which was more than a 3-day visit where they really just rolled out the red carpet for him.
Well, with Ryan Callahan, Go Vols 247, I guess what comes with the territory is a lot of pressure. But man, this definitely helps Tennessee in probably helping get other recruits, let alone the profile of Coach Heupel, in that it's always the misnomer that he can't recruit. So now all of a sudden you pull this 5-star. So how much do you think it's going to help in getting other players as well?
Yeah, it does. And, I think that, anybody that still had any lingering questions about Josh Heupel's ability to recruit, I think this certainly takes care of those. A lot of that I guess, reputation, you could say, that people thought or he had coming into Tennessee, a lot of that was just based on the fact that he'd been at UCF. I don't think he'd had a chance to really prove himself much as a recruiter, certainly not as a head coach. That's the only place he'd been before Tennessee. And as an assistant, though, he'd been at Oklahoma. He'd been in some big-time battles when he was at Oklahoma, guys like Cam Newton and even obviously coached Sam Bradford. So he's been involved in some other big-time quarterback recruitments in the past. So I think I'm not surprised to see, especially given his background too, as just kind of a quarterback guru, that A, Tennessee could win one of these battles, but B, if they were going to win one, quarterback was the place that made the most sense for them to win one of these first. So regardless, though, it does answer some serious questions about that. And because he is a quarterback, because there's a lot of time left for him to recruit this class, and I do expect him to be a pretty active peer recruiter, I do think this has a chance to kind of put Tennessee in the mix for some other players who might be interested in joining him, especially offensive players, wide receivers. Carnell Tate is a 5-star wide receiver from IMG Academy down in Florida. He's visited Tennessee twice since November, planning to come back again in a few weeks for an official visit. Guys like that, I think, will take a harder look at Tennessee as a result of them having a big-time quarterback, because it's someone they know will make Tennessee competitive and someone that they feel can get them the ball if they're an offensive player.
Well, Ryan, since you've been at 24/7, which has been a while now, I guess, do they do any research on how many, let's say, just say quarterbacks, and there's 5 stars, do they reach their potential? Do they do any numbers to that? What percentage of guys actually reach their potential with the 5-star at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I haven't looked at an exact number on that lately, but I have mentioned to people before. I think it's often about a 50-50 proposition.
Okay.
A lot of times at the quarterback position. It might be a little higher than that, but certainly, the NFL, it can be a crapshoot, and it's no doubt the same way at the college level sometimes. Plenty of examples of guys who've gone to, Alabama, Georgia, other schools that have just not panned out for one reason or another, or had to transfer out to play somewhere else. So it depends on what you consider a bust and a success, but I think it's definitely not a sure thing that if you're a 5-star, you're going to live up to the hype. And, I mentioned Jarrett Garantano earlier. That was a top 100 prospect consensus, really, that Tennessee landed several years ago. And we all know how his Tennessee career went. Played a lot of football, but just never quite matched the expectations coming in. So, you have to throw out that disclaimer. You never know. And actually, Nico Iamaleava is related to another big-time quarterback prospect. He's related to DJ Uiagalelei, who plays at Clemson. He was a top 2 or 3 prospects nationally himself, and just took over as Clemson starter this past year and had a little bit of a disappointing first year. So he's another example, and so he doesn't have to look far to find an instance of that where, so far at least, he's not quite lived up to that. So we'll see how it plays out for Nico, but I think there's a lot to look at when you see him on film that suggests that he's maybe got a really good chance at least of living up to a lot of that hype, because he's got so much upside. You see a lot of potential to his game that's still yet to be tapped, and I think he can get a lot better.
Well, exciting times for Tennessee, of course. Spring ball just started today. I guess kind of in a broad brush, give us what the storyline should be and what we should be looking for through spring ball.
Yeah, a lot to watch with this team. They obviously get the key building blocks back on offense with Hendon Hooker and Cedric Tillman. To have those two guys to kind of build things around offensively makes it a lot easier. But still a lot of questions to answer, because they had a limited roster to begin with last year, overcame a lot of that to win 7 games last year in their first year under Josh Heupel. But still, on defense, you have to replace Alontae Taylor at cornerback. Matthew Butler and a couple other guys on the defensive line now gone that played a lot of football for them last year. We know they had some problems at linebacker throughout the year, and still need to get an improved pass rush. They didn't get it to the quarterback consistently enough this past year. So on defense alone, you could really argue that they need to get better across the board to have a pretty good season the way some people are expecting from them. And then on offense, you've got to replace a couple key starters at receiver. Velus Jones Jr. and Javonte Payton both gone. So you've got a group of 4 freshmen already on campus that could help out there. We'll see if they go to the transfer portal for some additional help. That's still a possibility. And then at running back, you add a guy like Justin Williams, a four-star prospect from Georgia, to that group there that's led by Jabari Small. So it could be a pretty different-looking team this year, and we at least already have a glimpse of what that's going to look like with 13 early enrollees already on campus from their 2022 class. So it's a team that's still going to look quite a bit different, and that needs to get better and continue to get better this spring, and kind of see what they have before they potentially patch up some holes in the transfer portal this spring. I think they're still going to add several guys, but you need to get a good sense of what you have. So it's an important spring for them to kind of feel some things out.
No doubt about it. We're on Ryan Callahan with Go Vols 247.
So, Ryan, with that in mind, thinking about spring ball, and I know it just started today, but I'm always interested to see now Josh Heupel has been around the block a time with the Tennessee Volunteers, and how things like just little things in a spring practice and kind of have an organization like that under his regime is a little smoother the next spring around, now that he's had a full season of SEC under his belt as a head coach.
Yeah, we asked him a little bit about that today, and I think he feels a little more confident maybe than say Jeremy Pruitt before him going into year two, because he had already established himself as a head coach at UCF, and so I don't think there's a sense that they need to shake things up a whole lot. I think they already had a good sense of kind of who they are and what they do, and a lot of the staff had worked together previously and had good chemistry and sort of know what to expect from one another. Obviously, a new wide receivers coach this year, Kelsey Pope, so that gives them a little bit of a difference on the offensive staff. But otherwise, it's the whole staff from last year back for year two, and so we didn't see a whole lot different today. We'll see if anything emerges there. But when he was asked about that earlier, Josh Heupel kind of said, I spent a little more time watching the wide receivers today during individual periods, but a lot of it was very much the same. And I think continuity is one of the things Tennessee has going for itself this year, going into year two, is a staff that mostly stayed intact, and it's a staff that already had pretty good chemistry and knew what to expect from one another, because they do have some pretty deep ties to one another in a few spots.
Ryan Callahan, thanks for stopping by. You can find him on Twitter at Ryan Callahan 247, and of course at GoVols247.com. Excellent work, Ryan. Thanks for joining the show. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it for checking in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting times in Knoxville.
Yeah, big time. Ooh,
I mean,
exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, I just, when you start thinking about all the names, you haven't had a five-star quarterback since 2002.
Yeah, what made me ask those questions about how much the five stars had success.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremy Banks, he's from where I'm from, Indianapolis, Indiana, and I remember him, and he was a high-profile electric talent in high school, and then he ended up getting here and was just an okay quarterback. I think they moved him to wide receiver.
Yeah, he didn't really play quarterback.
He did. Yeah, so it shows you sometimes it doesn't work out. I mean, and sometimes it does.
You get lost in shuffle or
right.
yeah, sure.
So, it's kind of interesting. Depending on how much you work on your craft and continue to, grow and learn and continue to get better at what you do instead of relying a lot on your talent. Actually, when you get a 5-star mark, your talent is what it is. You're at the elite of the elite. Now, how much do you groom that talent is a whole nother story.
And that's why I think the game changers in college football, obviously the transfer portal, because if things don't work out, I mean, you think about it, Spencer Rattler was at Oklahoma last year, and he was mentioned in Heisman preseason talk. He ends up transferring. Where did he end up going? NC State, I think?
South Carolina.
That's South Carolina. That's
exactly
exactly right. And between that and the NIL stuff, I mean, it's just,
It's changed.
It really has. If you're a 5-star prospect and it doesn't seem like it's going to work out, maybe it isn't like your guy. Maybe he has a chance to go somewhere else to rekindle
what's the other
that.
quarterback that was just there last year? I forgot where he ended up. The high-profile kid from Georgia.
That was where?
That was with Tennessee. That left already. He was there last year. I don't know. How could I forget his number 15? So 15 is the quarterback that hardly ever played.
I think I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name.
Oh, Harrison Bailey.
Right, yeah, Harrison Bailey. Thank you.
He's already left my mind.
I know he left my mind. Yeah, see, and that's how
entered your transfer.
That's how quickly he left my mind. I couldn't even think. I was like, man, who's the kid? I could tell you where he went to high school. Alpharetta. I mean, I knew where. Marietta. All right, in Alpharetta. Right. So it was
the savior of the program about 2
right,
years ago.
And the hype that was surrounding him and the pressure to play him. Granted, it was under Pruitt. It was totally different. So sometimes kids can't handle that, and then they feel like they're not acceptable or not proven because they let everybody down.
And he went to UNLV, so he didn't transfer to
to a
he
big
was never
school.
a fit with Josh Heupel, but he didn't even end up at another Power 5 program.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was
That's a prime example of sometimes it just doesn't work out, and maybe it's a difference in coaching philosophy or coaching change, or whether it's the talent of the player or what their true
Just a
skill
fit.
set is, their fit. And how many times have you seen a player switch positions and sometimes have luck, and then sometimes just don't? It happens. I mean, things get
All
lost
the
in the
time.
shuffle.
Always.
I know people
So
in
don't get
Knoxville
too
are
hyped
excited.
up. Yeah, don't get too hyped. Get hyped, but don't get too hyped.
Yeah, just
like we
keep
got
it
to
at
see
a
him on the
good-
field first. Because by the way, they have Milton who will be there. They have the Jackson kid who's an early enrollee from Indianapolis, by the way.
Hey.
Yeah. By the way, and as well as don't forget, just because he's a little bit smaller and he's not on scholarship, his name is Schuler. He still is a quarterback.
Wearing
by the
his
way.
dad's number, too, by the way.
Yeah, 21.
Yeah, Navy.
Yeah. So they've got some guys on the roster that will be there next year after, I'm assuming, Hooker will leave.
It'll be a crowded quarterback
Yeah.
room.
And as the Vols
And still recruiting another big time kid too as well.
as the Vols basketball season abruptly ends, spring ball comes at the correct time.
Well, this was a nice little consolation for Tennessee fans for a second-round exit, was to grab Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah, kind of cushions the fall a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of
So it's
drowns out
different
what all really
sports.
happened, that they were a disappointing loss. And do you look at it, Lucas, being a fan and an alum, that this just was a disappointing season since they lost so quickly, or does that really matter? And the tournament is just a separate entity in itself in looking at the total body of work of the season?
It's hard to look at the total body of work without thinking about an early exit, but that's why I was so hung up on the SEC tournament. It was a kind of a big topic throughout that week about, just whatever you do here, that the big dance is what matters. But for me, an SEC tournament championship was so important because it was something that this team hadn't done since 1979. And say it's a disappointing second-round Sweet 16 exit, that's still a tangible trophy you have to hang on to that Tennessee hasn't had a lot of under Rick Barnes. You've shared a regular season title with Auburn. Now you have an SEC tournament championship. It doesn't take away the bitterness of a second-round exit. This team was capable of going so much further than that. But it does help that, Jason Martin said to me this morning, it's like, hey, at least you got that tournament championship. And that's what I think that was important to some people, to have a tangible trophy to hang on to that maybe makes it a little less.
Less below a consolation prize.
But it doesn't, it's still a bitter ending, no doubt.
Now, who do you blame for the loss? Everybody's going Barnes. Because we got to point the finger somewhere because of the history, but he's still not out there shooting. Now, could you question some of his coaching decisions here or there? But, man, they just couldn't hit shots at the end.
Michigan came prepared. Santiago Vescovi couldn't even sniff a good look throughout the entire first half. Hunter Dickinson had more threes alone than Tennessee did as a team. He hit 3. Tennessee was 2 for 18 on the day. Yeah, Rick, they were able to manufacture good looks in the second half. A couple of those go down. It's a different story. I cannot sit here and blame Rick Barnes' coaching and his subbing and his lineups for this. I can't do it. But his record in March is what it is. Right?
I want to ask you a question, Lucas, thinking about this, just the one-off of this, because Michigan's who beat them. They're in the Sweet 16. They have a chance to go to the Final Four?
Talk about Michigan?
Yeah, with the way they're playing, I just wonder if...
Well, wait. Let's stop there, though.
Yeah.
A lot of people saying Michigan shouldn't even made the tournament.
I
They were
was
17 and
saying
14, and I think you did say that. I wanted you to say
I
that.
was banging that drum.
And they had a bumpy season. They did. But
17 and 14.
But they're getting hot at the right time.
Well, of course they are.
That's the way this thing...
And
it's
Hunter
amazing how this
Dickinson,
works out.
Dickinson
that
can take
basketball
over a
stuff.
game. You got to get through first Villanova, 2 seed. And
Yeah.
You got to get through Arizona. The Final Four in the South region runs through Arizona. I think that's the best team in the country. They escaped the other day against TCU. I don't know if you caught it was like overtime game late Sunday night.
Well, and who's bounced out? You would think Arizona would be the favorite now anyway.
Yeah, Gonzaga's still the betting favorite. Gonzaga has to play Arkansas in the Sweet 16, but I think Arizona's the best team in the country. They were my national championship pick. I had Tennessee losing to them in the Elite Eight. You got to get through Arizona to get to the Final Four in the South. I don't know that Michigan can sustain this run long enough to get through in Arizona.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I had UT winning it like a ding dong.
Well, I told you yesterday, I don't fill out brackets anymore.
Yeah, well, I've
been obliterated on brackets.
Yeah, man.
Mine was extra bad this year.
Yeah, I thought they got the pressure and winning the SEC out of the way, and they were going to just go smooth sailing.
It felt different. I can't lie.
It did.
It felt different.
It did. I had never picked them ever. And going deep in the playoffs.
Sure.
I mean, the tournament.
Well, the thing about these, I'm always interested to see of all these bracket contests who's left. And I saw like Alan Bell tweeted there was like 48 entrants left of however many, and I forget what contest it was. But of those 48 people, it's like, what did they do differently? Are they some kind of what are they, a savant of
they probably
bracketology?
They probably don't watch college basketball.
That probably
That's
is
what people always tell me when I try to get my roommate, who's a big hockey guy, doesn't watch college basketball. He's like, "No, I don't know anything. I'll suck." I was like, "You don't understand, man. You're not knowing anything.
You maybe
gives
have
the
a better chance."
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we'll have a better chance to continue this program. Certainly in hour 2 on the way, we'll have Coach Dave McGinnis. The Mac Attack is back and going to be talking about Titans free agency and maybe how that shifts a different focus for what needs are entering the 2022 NFL draft for the Titans, and maybe some of the big moves at the top around the league, how that changes some of those things that, what the perception is and what the needs are in difference when you get to a war room in the end of April. We'll have all of that, and if you want to jump in and talk, 615-737-1045 is the number. He's Blaine Bishop. I'm not Mickey Ryan. Rhett Bryan in for Mickey out for today, and we'll continue Blaine and Mickey next on 1045 The Zone.
Nico!
It's Blaine and Mickey on 104.5 The Zone. Blaine Bishop rolling with you, getting ready to go to hour two. And Mickey Ryan out again today. Rhett Bryan in for him. And, we're talking all kinds of things today. We just talked to Ryan Callahan of Go Vols 247. They got a 5-star quarterback recruit for 2023, and spring practice started today. And there's all kinds of movement in the NFL continuing in free agency. We'll have Coach Dave McGinnis on in the next hour of Blaine and Mickey. Got all kinds of topics to discuss with you. If you've just joined us, Robert Woods, the Rams wide receiver that was traded to the Titans for a 2023 6th-round pick, they pick up his roster bonus, saving $3.5 million for 2022. So a flat $10 million base salary is what Robert Woods will cost the Titans, unless they were to restructure him. And they're going to, that's the thing I think that some folks don't understand is like, look, there's still going to be other moves going forward. I don't think there's going to be as many leading up to the draft. I think there'll be a few more after the draft, but with where they are in the cap, they're going to have to redo some other contract. They're going to move some things around to get some money. They have to make some money in this thing to be able to facilitate any other stuff.
Where's their cap situation? Do you know offhand?
Offhand, I don't know, but I think they're actually over at the moment.
Oh.
But they have to have so much to sign their draft class, and then certainly float money through the year for transactions.
Man, I love having you on because you can educate me. Tell me, how was this negotiations about who pays this roster bonus to Robert Woods? How does that go about?
That's a great question.
How do you determine which team? Is it because they didn't have the cap space? They said you got it for
that may have been a bargaining chip in the whole thing. It's like, hey, we'll give you a 6 next year. We'll take Robert Woods off your hands. We'll take his contract, but you get the roster bonus that's due here in a couple of days.
Well, I mean, it came out separate though, so we're just now learning it. So it wasn't finalized, that portion of it until today.
That may not, and obviously we won't know until the ink is dry or whatever, because we still haven't seen an official, I don't think, from the Titans, have we, in terms of how this deal's worked. But it's interesting how this, and I think maybe that's just what was on the bargaining table, and now that information's just now coming out, or maybe that was something
because
that
the Rams
had to
were
be
in trouble too. That's So they said to get this deal done.
Now,
that's the only way we're doing.
They got a new contract for Matthew Stafford, so maybe that freed up some money for them on their end.
Yeah, we're still waiting on Aaron Donald, right? Or he's going to retire, right? Yeah.
I think Aaron Donald can do pretty much whatever he wants.
Yeah. I think he's kind of pulling just in a nicer way the Aaron Rodgers type. I'm either going to retire or I'm getting an extension. He just hadn't said that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't blame him if he did either. I mean, the guy's...
I would blame him. I want to see talent. I don't want to see talent go and retire. I want to see domination.
Selfishly, sure. I mean, look,
no, you can't do that to us.
He's the he's the best defensive player for how many consecutive years, and I don't know when. I mean,
all right, now you're watching just as close as everybody else. Just kind of compare him and Big Jeff.
Well, Big Jeff, I think the difference between those two is Aaron, because he is smaller and a little lower to the ground, has a little more explosiveness and a little more burst than Jeff does. But Jeff is so doggone big, he just eats space. Now, I'm saying certainly Jeff has athletic traits out the wazoo, but it seems like Aaron Donald ran a 40-time comp to Cooper Kupp, his teammate. They were close in 40 time.
What?
Yes. Well, Cooper Kupp ran like a 4.62. He ran like a 4.68. So that's why I say this. I mean, he's just ridiculous. But I think,
so
to
Cooper
be no
Kupp,
bigger.
Cooper Kupp's still running by people, and I don't think he's running a 4.68 when he's running by them. I firmly believe that.
Aaron, think about Aaron Donald. That's the amazing part is, he's not a huge dude.
Oh, no.
But he is a game wrecker. And that's what's so exciting about Jeffrey Simmons is, we've seen him blossom year over year, and as big as he is, to have some explosion and all that stuff, he's about to be a game wrecker. And, Danico Autry has certainly helped with that production. Bringing him over from Indy was a brilliant move. because
I
of
love that signing.
what Nico did to the Titans in the last 3 or 4 games prior to that. He was just a nightmare for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Aaron Donald, that dude, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer.
Well, he's one of one. I mean, he's just one of a kind. If
He's got a gold jacket, though, Blaine. I mean, if he
no doubt.
stopped today, he's got a gold jacket.
Oh, yeah, that's not even a question. I would just be upset that he retired and we continue to see him play at that level and
In his prime,
yeah, no doubt about it. But when you see him in person, you think he plays like middle linebacker.
Exactly.
He does not have the massive size that most of the D tackles that played in this league that have been dominant. So that's what's so uncanny. But his power, you got to go watch him on his Instagram. I don't follow too many of the current guys, but I go and look at him work out on there, and I'm just amazed at some of the power that he's producing, lifting weights, and just some of his drills and his quick footwork, let alone his pass rush skills are off the charts. And that's probably the only place, and I've seen Big Jeff continue to develop his pass rush skills. His power, I think he's just as powerful. I think you were right. He's, Aaron Donald's a little lower, a little quicker, but we're talking about a bigger, massive, quick, athletic big man who now is growing his pass rush skills. Mm-hmm. And he's continuing to grow. I mean, each and every year he's gotten better, as you mentioned. So I'm interested to see. I think just because he's a bigger human being that potentially, listen to me, based off of talent, he could be just as good as Aaron Donald if he continues to grow his pass rush ability because of his power. And then his hustle ability, and when I say that, I'm talking about typically coaches want D linemen to go 10 and 10, left or right, maybe even 15. I see Big Jeff running down people and causing nightmares and hitting them with all that force and power that he has too. So he's right there on the cusp, and I think this is going to be, to me, before the season, I would probably try to lock up Big Jeff. Really.
You don't want any
no parts of that.
Of him escaping into the free agency market.
No, I don't want any chance of me perturbing his agent or him about his contract. That's where we at. Right. Now, what?
But you're right, though, and I can understand what you're saying about the potential is there because
he's got some
violent hands with a knockback, same thing as Aaron Donald. Footwork I would give to Aaron Donald, but footwork is getting better all the time and in sync with the violent hands. Yep. And the core strength of Big Jeff is no question, but he's so much bigger than Aaron Donald. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. The core strength of Aaron Donald's the one thing that stands out. He's like, this dude's got how many plates on that thing? And that I don't know if he's still doing those crazy workouts. A couple of years ago, he's doing that thing where he's blocking knives and stuff. Look like a ninja.
That's the one I saw. That's the last time I was like, what the heck?
I'm like, is he planning to be a kung fu artist? What are we doing?
I was like, oh, man, totally different than, Jameis Winston in his backyard with some guy just rushing and throwing a mattress at him or something. It was crazy. I was like, wow.
Oh, hour 2 of Blaine and Mickey rolls on right here with Rhett Bryan filling in for Mickey Ryan and the Hitman rolling right beside on 104.5 The Zone.
It is 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Titans saving some cap space on a move made over the weekend in the trade for Robert Woods from the LA Rams, as the Titans sent a 6th-round pick for the wide receiver. Over the Cap reporting that the trade is not official, which should mean that the Rams are picking up his roster bonus. Multiple reports confirming that is indeed the case and that it will save the Titans $3.5 million in cap space. One former Titan has a new home in fullback Kari Blassingame. As Aaron Wilson reports, the Chicago Bears have signed the former Vanderbilt product to a 1-year deal. Former Packers outside linebacker Zadarius Smith has agreed to terms with the Minnesota Vikings. It is a 3-year deal, a base value of $42 million. Some staff updates with Tennessee basketball as the season has come to an end after a second-round loss to Michigan in the NCAA tournament. Assistant coach Mike Schwartz moves on to take the head coaching job at East Carolina. Tennessee basketball announcing Justin Gainey has been promoted to associate head coach, while Greg Polinsky has been appointed to the vacant assistant coaching position that was previously occupied by Schwartz. The Preds are on the West Coast this week after last night's 6-3 win over the Anaheim Ducks that saw Philip Forsberg break Victor Arvidsson's single-season scoring record with his 35th goal of the year. Back in action against the LA Kings, a late puck drop at 9:30. And Vanderbilt's postseason run continues in the NIT quarterfinals tonight, an 8 p.m. tip-off against Xavier. The winner will move on to the NIT semifinals in Madison Square Garden to take on the winner between St. Bonaventure and Virginia. Vanderbilt may be doing it with the new logo at VU Commodores on Twitter. The athletic department officially announcing a new logo of Vanderbilt Athletics. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour 2 of Blaine and Mickey here on 104.5 The Zone rolls on. I'm Rhett Bryan in for Mickey Ryan, who is out today. Blaine Bishop right here riding shotgun as we can take your phone calls if you want. 615-737-1045. Coming up here in just a few minutes, it's the Mac Attack. Coach Dave McGinnis. We'll talk a little draft. We'll talk a little free agency. We were having a discussion about, we talked about last segment about Aaron Donald, Jeffrey Simmons, and started thinking about quarterback sacks. And, the Titans defense had a pretty nice year in that regard. And I said to you, if, health being, the big outlier with 91 different players last year, but you bring Harold Landry back, Nico Iamaleava was such a great addition, Jeffrey Simmons, Bud Dupree coming off of a year removed from the ACL. And then, you got your Tierra Tarts of the world and some of those guys. You could flirt with the franchise record for sacks in a season, which
I didn't even know. I was like, oh, who had that? Yeah. Well, I wasn't doing a lot of sacking, that's for sure.
Your team back in 2000, the 2000 Titans had 55 quarterback sacks. That's still the franchise record. And the Titans are, flirting with that. I mean, you had Harold Landry with 12. Nico Iamaleava had 9. Jeffrey Simmons had 8.5. Bud Dupree had 3, and then several had 2, 2.5, through there. But, I mean, you've got some numbers there.
Yeah, I think if you expect Bud Dupree to be what he should be now after 1 year removed from the ACL, I think he'll be a double-digit guy, or at least somewhere thereabout. So you can approach that record for sure. I mean, it's in the distance here. I think they have a possibility of getting more than 55.
The thing about
cool, because that means they're doing really well. That means that we're winning some games.
Yes, and that means there's probably some gift-wrapped interceptions for the secondary and maybe even the linebacking core. I mean, those things, they play hand in hand. If you got good pressure up front, you can make some things happen on the back end. But, I think that was the great thing about bringing Harold Landry back is that you procured that talent if you're John Robinson and that coaching staff, and you've seen him come along in this thing. The sacks are always the thing guys like that are measured by. But when you look at the other things, the times he's been asked to drop down in coverage,
yeah,
and his pressure number, his pressures, quarterback pressures since 2019 are up there with the elite. I mean, they're up there with the Von Millers and the Shaq Barretts and the whoever else you want to throw in that. He's effective. And when you put some dudes around him, that number starts going north. to your point, I think that's a reciprocal thing. If we think Bud Dupree, a year removed from the ACL, is what we think he is, I think that makes Harold Landry better. And Big Jeff getting better, and Danico Autry, I just think it's this synergy that all works together.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, and everybody has to don't just look at the numbers because if anybody really watched Landry, he dropped and was very effective in coverage as well. So it'll be interesting now how they tie that in with Dupree and who's rushing, who's not, or do they both come, which they do a lot as well. So I love that gamemanship periodically throughout games where people are not really paying attention. I mean, I saw him running on a vertical route by a tight end because he had like the seam. And I'm like, whoa, dang, man. Then I start seeing a lot in his game. So it was part of that game plan. So it shows that they have versatility in their game and not just pass rushers. But when you add pass rusher to having versatility, I think, man, that becomes like a weapon. And then when both guys can do it on the outside, that's really unique. So it was special, and I'm excited that they got to bring him back. A real good guy, too. So all those things are matching. Well, I didn't know if they're going to be – I didn't think they were going to be able to sign him because I thought the number was going to get up there.
Sure.
It was going to be out of reach. And, as long as he's happy, they're happy. We'll keep it moving. We'll see where this goes with Big Jeff, though, next year. Because I thought that was going to be, that's going to – yes,
that may take 2 Brinks trucks to back up in that deal.
Yeah. All I think about is Jalen Ramsey pulling up at the Jaguars with the Brinks truck. Remember he did that? That was hilarious. That was pretty good. So Big Jeff's going to have 2.
Because he's a big guy, right? So it requires more.
Mm-hmm. But the question is, what has really been scary to me, the acquisition of Matty Ice to the Colts. Does that scare you? Because I said yesterday it scares me because now I know their defense is legit, but now offensively they got a competent quarterback. Mm-hmm. So not to say he's not going to make mistakes, but he is definitely an upgrade from Carson Wentz. Yes. And even over Phillip Rivers and whoever else you want to go back to, besides, Luck and Peyton Manning, no doubt. All right. So we say, okay, what else do they need? They need more weapons, and they need, I think, it's still a tackle. And so once you protect Matty Ice, he is I'm a little nervous. I really believe they can fix what they need now in the draft with a couple picks and maybe a pickup of a free agent that's cut late at receiver. And you match that up with another rookie elite weapon on offense, let alone the guy that kind of coming back, number 11. So, man, I think it's going to be a fight for the AFC South.
Right, and we know Michael Pittman Jr. is their guy, and then they've got Paris Campbell. And you're right. Does T.Y. Hilton decide to run it back one more year? We'll see. We don't, But I think your concern's valid because we saw it 2 years ago when they picked up Phillip Rivers. And Phillip Rivers along that same line of age, he bothered me. I didn't like him coming here in this division. So, I mean, the bottom line to what you're saying, Matt Ryan is not just a bag of donuts. He's not a bag of potatoes.
Well, he's an accomplished quarterback. A lot of people think he's a Hall of Fame level quarterback. I'm not the one to make that decision. But I would say he is very competent. Every time I watch him, especially if I see him live, I love how he progresses through his reads. So now he'll be implemented in a different offense. So sometimes that impacts quarterbacks more than others. That's why some of these big-name quarterbacks, when they leave, they say, I'm running my offense. Well, that's not going to happen here in this situation. Just like he was with Arthur Smith, and he didn't have the talent around him as well. But his numbers didn't look like they did the previous years where he was comfortable in an offense where he knew it backwards and forwards. He was learning on the fly, let's say, to a certain extent in a new offense. So that's going to happen again. So we shall see how quickly they picked up. But he's going to have a running game. And we all know what a running game can do to a quarterback.
He's got a hoss in Jonathan Taylor.
So my trap got tight when they traded for him. I just
Your trap got tight.
My trap. I started saying I gotta go do some push-ups or something. I'm getting nervous. I started getting nervous. I did. I was happy that the coach didn't have a quarterback.
All right, let me ask you this.
I was like, pick up Baker Mayfield. Yeah, I'll take that all day.
Yes,
Matty
I would
Ice?
too.
I don't know about that one.
He's a prototypical style quarterback. He looks the part and he plays the part, right?
Yeah, he is.
There's the difference.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this because this is you talk about poking the bear. I'm already seeing national pundits say, well, Colts are going to win the division now just because of that.
Well, I said I was getting nervous. I didn't say it, but I think they
and
are
that's
a
where
contender.
I'm at. And look, you could say we're
nervous.
biased or whatever, but I'm like, no, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Titans have a pretty doggone good roster here. Let's pump the brakes a minute there, Seabiscuit. Hang on.
Seabiscuit. Yeah.
But I mean, it's like, well, they are clearly AFC South isn't as easy now because they're going to. I'm like, whoa, hold on a minute.
I guarantee you Vegas already has them there, right? I'm sure.
Probably.
Just like Vegas had them winning 8 games or 9 games every year since Vrabel's been the head coach.
Yeah. and I think that's the mark that Titans fans struggle with is that going 7-9 and 8-8, maybe not as hard, but going that next level to double-digit plus wins, that's where the rubber meets the road. Yeah, that's where it's the toughest.
Oh, no doubt about it. And Vrabel and JR have done a great job, but man, right now, if you look at the schedule that we have a tough schedule.
Oh, that's what happens.
All these elite quarterbacks, I think we got them all on the schedule.
It's what happens when you win the division, and then it's unlucky in the way it lines up with the rotational, out of division stuff and out of conference stuff. But yeah, it's going to be tough. Absolutely. I mean, you've got the Cowboys coming here. You've got Russell Wilson and the Broncos coming here. You're playing you're playing the AFC West. So you're going to Los Angeles to play Justin Herbert and the new look Chargers, and you're going to play Kansas City again, and you've got the Raiders, with Devontae Adams to throw to now.
Are you trying to make me cry or something?
No.
You're scared.
I'm feeding your fear, right?
Oh, you are. It's just like, man, all these quarterbacks. Have you looked at the schedule? Look at this thing. Ooh.
And it was last year too, right? They couldn't catch a break on. Last season was the NFC West that they played every team in, and then this season it's the AFC West.
Yep.
Which some people are already saying, based off the quarterbacks, that may be the toughest of them all.
Yeah. It should be, that division should be called the Wild Wild West instead of the AFC West because it's like an arms race, man. I mean, they're just adding weapons left and right.
Well, what was the record against the NFC West last season, Rhett? Obviously beat the Rams and you beat the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm trying to remember what those other two. Lost to the Cardinals.
Yep.
And beat the 49ers.
That's right.
So you were 3-1.
Yeah.
So I remember looking at that as a point of concern on the schedule, like saying, okay, you have to play the entirety of probably the best division in football.
When you think about, per our conversation we just had a few minutes ago, that Sunday night football game in L.A., Big Jeff put on a show. That dude had 3.5 sacks.
No, he did that in the half, didn't he? Well, against the Rams, he did.
I mean, they were putting on a show. Oof. So we're going to keep putting on a show called Blaine and Mickey. And when we return, Coach Dave McGinnis joins us of Titans Radio, the Mac Attack. We'll be talking Titans ball with him next when Blaine and Mickey continue on 104.5 The Zone. It's Blaine and Mickey here in the 2 o'clock hour on 104.5 The Zone, talking all things Titans and free agency and certainly the NFL draft coming up at the end of next month. And we are joined by Coach Dave McGinnis. As Blaine says, the Mac Attack is back on the airwaves with Blaine and Mickey. Mickey's out today. I'm Rhett Bryan filling in for him. Coach Dave McGinnis, how are we, sir?
Well, I'm doing good, Rhett. You don't sound like Mickey, so that's a little bit of a surprise. How you doing, Blaine?
He was asking how you were doing when you put your headphones on there.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I was thinking about you and Rhett. You know, it's just like fun times, man. You guys are always together, man, throughout the week, let alone on game day, man. So you're right at home in the wheelhouse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't keep up with Rhett every hour of the day, and now that I know he's filling in for Mickey, it's great to talk to both of you.
Appreciate it, Coach Mac, man.
Hey, let's talk for a second before we talk any draft stuff at all, because I know you've been heavily involved in that stuff for a while. But with what the Titans have done in free agency, they bring back Jeff Swaim on a one-year deal. They bring into the fold a new Titan in former Brown and Falcon Austin Hooper. And that's a room that was getting thin just in terms of need. How much does that maybe change what John Robinson would like to do come the end of April in the 2022 draft, knowing that there won't be any like high drafted tight ends on night one, but there's some candidates in the middle rounds that can help flesh out the rest of that position group?
Yeah, Rhett, that's a multi-layered question, and let me answer it like this. Let me answer the back end of that first. There are no first-round tight ends in this draft, but there are quite a few belly of the draft tight ends in this draft. Now, as far as, you know, they've now got two tight ends in the tight end room. You need more than that. And so I think they will still address that. I don't ask John Robinson what he's going to do, but in my humble opinion, looking at the roster, they will still address that position somewhere in the draft. And again, you know, we're quite a ways ahead of that. But I do know, you know, after having vetted these tight ends, in fact, I think Blaine and I talked about these a couple of weeks ago, you know, on the show, just some of the mid-tier guys that are going to be there. And it just depends on, you know, on what flavor and what type of skill set that you want to bring in. But I think what it does, and especially you've got Swaim back and then you bring in, you know, a veteran player in Hooper. Now at least you know now what you're not bringing someone in that has to start immediately in a dire emergency situation. And you've got time to kind of look at that and then look at your other draft picks. But I still think they will address that in the draft, if that answers your question.
It does.
We're on with Coach Mac, giving us the Mac Attack. I guess, Coach, I want to start off a little bit talking about, you know, we're probably getting a great value in the trade for Robert Woods, but just kind of tell us, you know, what he brings to the table and how he fits into this offense and why it was paramount that we got a verified number 2 guy, and hopefully he'll be healthy come training camp and full speed ahead.
Yeah, that's the first thing. I mean, he was a very valuable asset to what they were doing in that zone operated scheme that they ran there. I mean, he was the dude until they got Cooper Kupp, and you know, now coming off of the ACL, I think he suffered that in November in practice, and so you know his recovery will be something that all of us will have our eyes on. But his skill set fits exactly into what this offense is. It's the same skill set that fit into what they did at the Rams and what they do at a multitude of teams around the league. And here's the other thing. I don't know Robert Woods personally. I just know that in my varied conversations with people that have coached him and also that have been around him, this is exactly the type of guy that you do want in your locker room. And so that's big. You know, I was just coming back from a luncheon that I was asked to speak at. You know, I do various things around the city. And I listened to you guys when you first came on. You were asking about the Robert Woods, and then you were asking about, you know, what it means, you know, as far as when you release a player with a June 1st cut designation.
We're referring to Julio?
Yes,
I think I was the one with the question.
Yeah, for Julio, I can tell you what that means, and here it is. Both parties benefit from that, and here's the thing: The club benefits because any type of acceleration is not, and any type of money that you might recoup, you're going to be able to get. But the caveat is it's not available to you until after June 1st. The benefit for the player is his release. You're able to release him, and then he's able to get into the free agent fray immediately. So rather than holding him, until June 1st, as to where he would not be able to be in the free agent fray. But at the same time, if you designate him as a June 1st cut, then that money that you are able to save, it'll be available to you, but not immediately. It'll be available to you as a club after June 1st. Thus, that money will be available to you, but you still got to be able to prorate your contracts so that you can take advantage of that. I mean, the salary cap, guys, is a living, breathing organism that is constantly moving. Mm-hmm. First time I was involved with the salary cap, it came in the league in 1994. I think the cap was $34.5 million then. That was what the cap was, but nobody really knew how to maneuver it. So, I studied it for 6 years before I became a head coach, and still, there's questions every day that come up with it, but that's the answer for your June 1st.
Great. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you that. But all right, kind of take us behind the scenes. Now, has that always been the case, or when they give the extension to the CBA, did they add that in there, or had I just missed this and it's always been, an option?
Being able to designate, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been an option. It's been an option. Most of the time when you're making those deals, it's part of what is talked about when you are doing it. All right. And so every bit of that has to be considered. I mean, guys, it's a lot like, you remember when we acquired Ryan Tannehill from the Dolphins. I mean, they paid most of his salary for that first year. A lot of those things that you can do when you're trading with a team, it just depends on how much the team that is trading the player is willing to absorb to be able to not take a big hit on their salary, whatever that may be. So there are a lot of things that you can do with a salary cap to manipulate it, and that's one of them that's always been available.
Well, now that leads me to my last question here, and that's Robert Woods, and then that the Rams are paying his $3.5 million bonus there. I guess how do those conversations go about with the GMs when they're having these conversations? Because that got out today, not kind of separate, even though it might have come, it came with the package at the same time when the trade happened. So kind of take us through those kind of conversations.
Yeah, it was in the package, to begin with, because that's always the way it works. I mean, and those are all the instances that you have to work through when you are talking about a trade. And again, a lot of it, Blaine, depends on the cap shape that each side in the negotiations has at the time. And so, that probably was one of the things they said, look, would you absorb this bonus here, and then we will be able to spread this out here. But what we will do is we will take the salary, off of your hands if you will pay the bonus. A lot of those things go into it. I've been involved in a lot of these negotiations, and so it's always part of it from the start, because all of these permutations are involved in a player's salary. And so if you're trying to fit numbers into the cap, you always take all of those elements singly by themselves, and they all have to be part of the package when you consummate the deal.
Cool. Appreciate it. We're on with Coach Mack giving us the Mack attack of the salary cap.
The salary cap attack. All right. So you have been working on draft stuff actually a little earlier than you normally do. You've been doing this for about 3 months now from what your conversations with me have been. And I know that the quarterback draft is always different from the regular draft. That's what you taught me first, and it's always true. While the quarterback class doesn't appear to be as attractive as it was a year ago with the Trevor Lawrences of the world and the like, is this one of those things with the Titans being at 26 where some quality players can still be pushed down to them because there's more big men involved? In fact, it looks like there's good prospects at offensive line, interior offensive line, edge pass rushers, those kinds of things. Those numbers add up eventually. I know you don't think there'll be like 5 or 6 quarterbacks maybe taken in the first round, but with a quarterback or two and then those other big guys, maybe somebody still is shoved down to 26 that's pretty good.
Yeah, well, to your conversational point on this, Rhett, last year there were 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round, 3 of them the first 3 picks. All right? That's not going to be the case this year. It's not going to be. And then what that did, that pushed a lot of edge rushers and offensive linemen down last year. Now, What is going to happen this year is really much is the reverse of it. The edge rushers and the offensive linemen are at the top of this draft. That's where the top of the draft is. You've got one safety that's up there that will be taken very high. Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame. But the rest of them, and you've got a couple of corners, but the biggest bulk of the players, the position-wise, is going to be edge rushers and offensive linemen, especially tackles up at the top. Now, the quarterbacks, there will still be quarterbacks, to your point, taken in the first round, but that's because the quarterback draft is separate, from everybody else's draft. There are still teams that need quarterbacks, whether they're going to need somebody to develop or whether they're just still not sure. I think the disruption in the quarterbacks moving that we saw in this free agency period tells you just how much, some teams are in desperation for quarterbacks for different reasons. Some because of malcontent as to where they were, that just the sandpaper had gotten too much friction between ownership or between an organization and a quarterback, between a quarterback and a coaching staff, that finally something had to be done, whether money had to be moved and the acceleration of a quarterback's contract that had been pushed back was too much for the present team to be able to absorb. But for whatever reasons, we have seen a lot of quarterback movement to this point of people changing, of named quarterbacks changing, some at different points in their careers than others. But there are still some teams that are going to have. Carolina still hadn't figured out who their quarterback is going to be yet. I'm not sure if Seattle still has figured out who their quarterback is going to be. So there are still some teams that are going to need quarterbacks, and then they're going to have to decide where and when, if with this crop that they are looking at, they would be willing to take a chance on somebody. But the overall draft is completely flipped as far as those positions are concerned, if you're talking about in totality as to what it was last year.
All right, let me back up a second, because you mentioned all the quarterback movement in the first week of free agency, less than that actually, because it's a week tomorrow. You've seen this from day one when the salary cap was first instituted in the first, early 90s there and to current day. I can't remember a crazier free agency window when you're thinking about all the pieces and parts that move. Because back then, the first class, it was, where does Reggie White go? He goes to the Packers, and they end up winning a world championship sometime later. But, named quarterbacks, household names are moved in this thing this year, and it's, major pieces and parts. And then all the other flurry of activity that you normally have with large names in the league. I don't remember a free agent period like this.
Yeah, and I think it's indicative of the times they're in, because, as I said, 1994, the salary cap was $34.5 million, and you didn't have quarterbacks eating up as much of the cap then, salary cap wise, as they are now. Now, your quarterback eats up a massive part of your salary cap, and so that has to be taken into consideration, when you're constructing a roster. And the other thing that has happened now is, and as I said, it's for different reasons that all these quarterbacks have moved, but I would agree with both of you on this. I have not seen, I've been involved in it for a while, this many quarterbacks, drastically moving places. Sometimes there's one or two, but this has been quite a redo for quarterbacks across the league for various reasons. I agree with that.
Well, with Coach Mack giving us the Mack attack, I guess, Coach, going from quarterback to now the guys that's hunting down the quarterbacks. Big Jeff. We were talking about Big Jeff compared to Aaron Donald. Take yourself back. You were part of the staff that drafted Aaron Donald. At this point where Jeff is in at his career, compare him to Aaron Donald at the same point. I think Aaron Donald might have been the defensive MVP at that point. I'm not sure. So kind of take us through the maturation of what Jeff looks like compared to him at this point.
Yeah, that's good. That's a very good question, Blaine, and for a comparison. I was involved heavily in the vetting and in the drafting. I was with that group. Myself, Mike Waffle, the defensive line coach at the time, that was a huge advocate, for Aaron Donald, the Rams at that point. We got him as a 13th pick because here's the conversation on Aaron Donald when he was coming out And I got a very good friend that has just retired from Pittsburgh named Bob Junko that I coached with in college. That was a huge part for years in the Pittsburgh athletic department, especially the football department. And he was involved in the high school recruiting of Aaron Donald. And he called me prior to the draft and said, look, Aaron Donald's coming out. I'm just wanting you to know about this kid, Mac. This guy, now, don't let him tell you he's too short. Don't let him tell you he's too short. I'm just telling you right now, and Bob Junko was a very accomplished defensive coach in his career. He said, this guy's different. Well, when you start vetting him, they both came into the league with different circumstances. Mm-hmm. Aaron Donald came in at the 13th pick because, some teams had deemed him too short for the position as far as the numbers were, until you really started digging into, what all of his capabilities were and started vetting him as a person. Big Jeff was taken with the 19th pick because he injured his ACL, in pre-draft workouts. But here's the difference. When we took Aaron Donald, we brought him into a group. We thought he was the last missing piece to be a real good rush group because we had just taken, Michael Brockers from LSU as the number one pick that had a tremendous career. But he was a bigger. He's a big man, massive man. As a shade and could move. But then the two edge guys were Chris Long and were Robert Quinn. And so we had at one time there at the Rams when we were there defensively building a team to beat the Seahawks. When Russell Wilson was going good, we had 4 number one picks across that defensive front. So Aaron Donald really benefited early in his career from what we had around him and the type of defense that we were running. Now, what Aaron Donald has done through coaching changes, he has continued to develop. And once we got him on the campus, his work ethic was second to none. And his demeanor, physically, they're different. They're very much different. Jeffrey Simmons, if he doesn't have the knee, he's going to be a top 5 pick. But he's a big, massive player that still has lateral quickness for a big man, and he's got massive strength, massive take on, a lot of push, a lot of knockback. Aaron Donald is a 3 technique that relies on a lot of movement, but his hand strength and his hand technique that he has developed over his career have been impressive. Both of them have massive core strength. It's just designated in different ways. Aaron Donald, more in quickness. Big Jeff, more in power. Both of them clearly premier defensive tackles. But it just points out this. There is no one-size-fits-all. What you have to do is vet the player, vet not only his natural abilities, but also vet what's inside of him. Is he willing to work, and is he willing to work on his craft to get better? Both of them have that.
No doubt about it. We're on with Coach Mack giving us the Mack attack. I guess lastly with me, everybody's seen that Marcus Mariota was signed to the Falcons. Do you think him and Arthur reunion, he can revive his career to a point where now he'll be viewed as a starting quarterback in the National Football League?
Well, he'll get a chance to start. He's going to start. Arthur made that decision, to let 14-year veteran there go for whatever reasons, money being a big part of it, and so they're revamping everything. They're in Atlanta. Arthur has intimate knowledge of what Marcus is. Marcus has intimate knowledge of who Arthur is, and so will he get a chance to revive his career? He will get more of a chance than he had being a backup with the Raiders, because he's going to be a starter in Atlanta.
And so how much does Matty Ice then affect that trade from Atlanta to the Colts affect
Blaine
the Colts?
is very fearful now the Colts are going to be really good.
I'm a little nervous of Matty Ice, man. I got to be honest. They get some receivers there and they get a tackle, and then I'm like, uh-oh.
First of all, let me say this. Blaine Bishop has never been fearful of anybody.
Well, I am not in control of any of this, so that's probably half the problem.
I've been in over 700 football games in my career. I've never been scared one Sunday, Monday, or Thursday.
Right.
You haven't either.
But that's the fan in me,
No, well, so let's take that off the board. Now. It's what will he do there? I don't know. We'll see. You're going to play him twice a year. We will see how he fits in there, how everybody else fits around him. I know what he has done in his career. He's had really high moments in his career, and he's had very low moments in his career. I will say this. I think he is probably going to be a little bit more stable because he's demonstrated it throughout his career than Carson Wentz was. Carson Wentz, has been very schizophrenic in his career, as far as up, down, up, down, up, down. Still a good player. I mean, we have vetted him very hard when it was between he and Jared Goff when the Rams had that first pick. So it's not that Carson Wentz is not a good player. He has just had trouble staying on a consistent path. I think what has gone on with Matty Ice is he's been on a pretty consistent path. Now, ups and downs, has he had them? Yes. Where is he now? In his 14th year, going into his 15th year in the season, we'll see. But we'll get that answered at least twice a year. But he's got to go through a 17-game season just like everybody else.
Coach Mack, you're right in terms of the stability, because that's what Blaine and I have been talking about today, is that you feel like, at least from the stability standpoint, they're two different players, but it's stability much like when they got Phillip Rivers 2 years ago, in bringing stability to the position.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. And again, as I said, I mean, it was very surprising to me because, Frank Reich was such a big proponent and had great success at Philadelphia with Carson Wentz. He was the reason Carson Wentz was brought into
That's
the
right.
league. I mean, he was the reason. I mean, and he convinced ownership to do it. I saw an article, I think, a couple of weeks ago where he apologized to ownership for it. But look, you're going to make mistakes. It just didn't work out. Now, he doesn't have any history, with Matty Ice. But as you said, it's just like Phillip Rivers. He had a little bit of history there. But when you've got an accomplished quarterback, I mean, they've seen it all. They've done it. It just depends on how the flow works with the new team that he comes in. And as I said, guys, look, all of this conjecture is great. It makes for great talk radio. It makes for great articles. It makes for everything. But when it matters? When you're on the field. Yeah. So we'll see.
Coach Mack, you always matter. Thanks for joining the show. Appreciate it, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Mac attack.
Guys, see, Blaine, you've never been fearful. Get that out there.
Yeah, smack some bubbles in the mouth, right?
Yeah, regardless of what I have said. That was an error on my part.
No, I'm definitely scared now.
All right, Coach Mack, thank you.
See ya.
Coach Mack appears via our friends at Farm Bureau Health Plans. It's like an extra set of pads when you need them the most. Reach to the friends at Farm Bureau Health Plans. They've been protecting Tennesseans since 1947. That's 75 years. You can find them at fbhb.com. When we come back, we wrap up Blaine and Mickey with me, not Mickey Ryan, but he is Blaine Bishop. Next on 104.5 The Zone.
You are Rhett Bryan.
Blaine and Mickey wrapping it up here on 104.5 The Zone. Blaine Bishop right here and rolling. Rhett Bryan in for Mickey Ryan, who is out today. That's some good conversation. Man, we talked about everything in the world. From 5-star quarterbacks at UT in spring football.
Yeah, Nico.
And see, you're smart. You're just going to stick to Nico.
No, I've really done. That's why I just said his last name.
No,
I got a year to get it right. 'Cause he may not, and let's not confirm, Lucas.
It's early, though. You're right.
It's not, he hasn't signed on the dotted line. I mean, like, it's still, but he has committed verbally, so we go down that road. But
Iamaleava.
Yeah, I'm not going to rack my
You're
brain
like, I'll let
around
you do that. That's what you said yesterday. You're going to say that. I'm not saying it.
You got it. So, yeah, man.
I think about all those years that people would say Mariota instead of Mariota.
People still saying that.
Oh, yeah.
They
that's
do.
still- it's-
National
I
guys, too.
feel like
Get Up this morning, it was all over the place.
I feel like
Somebody said it this morning?
Oh, yeah, I was hearing on ESPN
up north
this
and
morning.
up northeast.
Oh, you
they
blaming the
say-
Northerners.
No, but I mean they call people named Mario. They say Mario.
Oh.
Mario Andretti.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think it's a regional dialect thing, and that's where a lot of the big,
Oh, but they're supposed to be
Pundits.
smarter than us here.
they are. But when the guy tells you, no, it's Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, that's how I learned to just say Mar.
Yeah, it's like you're
Mariota.
saying his first name a second time.
I love that you used Andretti. That's a great reference. Great
Yeah.
reference.
Yeah,
really
it's
was.
like,
He made the
Indy
show
car
smarter
driver
today.
Mario Andretti. But I mean, there's a lot of announcers, writers, whoever, that up north say Mario. Not Mario Brothers, Mario Brothers.
Well, they need to come down here and talk to you.
But they're going to have that they're going to have that problem in Atlanta now. The Falcons have to figure that one out. Because even the night he was drafted, remember, Goodell messed it up.
Oh, man.
Marioto.
Oh, yeah.
That was horrible.
I'm like, wait a minute, is he from Japan now? What
We
are you doing?
we forget about
Mariota.
that.
Tell you what I thought, though. I was like, man, is that somebody
Don't
else?
arigato, Marcus
Asian.
Mariota? What are we talking
I
about?
was like, oh, man, somebody try to, elongate it out so he could pronounce it right, and he messed it up.
just-
We forget
yeah.
about that because the Honor Landry thing came after that,
That's
right?
right.
So we all focus in on Honor Landry. That wasn't Goodell, though. That was Vince Young that said that. But we forget about the Mariota. How do
Yeah.
you mess up the number 2 pick in the draft? How do you not do your homework on that?
Yeah. I mean, people have been saying his name hundreds of times a day for weeks and months, especially in that spring.
Goodell's notorious for that.
But yeah, now Honor Landry, that was something from Vince.
Yeah, I would love to know how that
Honor
happened.
Landry. And I guarantee you what it is those cards, they still hand write the pick selection on those cards. And if you're like my my scrawl, I'm left-handed. My name on my Social Security card is Chicken Scratch because that's
Man,
what
they
mine
should
look
write
like.
it out like alphabets. Like, they can't be up here scribbling out. Honor. Come on.
I'm with you, but I guarantee you that's what happened.
You think that's what happened?
Because they still hand write those cards. There's those folks at the tables. They take the phone call from the GM. This is who the pick is. They write it on the card. The page of the runner takes it up to the stage, and there we go.
Yeah, because he said it so smoothly, like he knew it was right.
Right. And that tells me the handwriting was just so where it looked like maybe like Honor Landry. I'm willing to say that on behalf of VY because that's how that works with them just writing. It's kind of an archaic way of, but that's the way they do it. It's the way they've always done it.
I
Those-
still want to laugh about it.
Oh, it's hilarious.
But what's more egregious, Mariota or Honor Landry?
Mariota.
I'd almost say Honor because I don't know anybody named Honor.
But but you saying the writing was messed up,
Yeah.
so anybody could have
He's
messed
got a
that
pass there. Yeah.
Honor is I don't know how you get honor from Harold no matter how bad your handwriting is.
Because it looks like an N instead of an R. I mean, I just think that's might have what happened. What you're saying, I was going by. He just bashed it.
Mariota's just a typo, but still, you got to know the name of the number 2 quarterback and the Heisman winner.
It seems like it seems like Delaney Walker had a flub announcing a pick one time since he was playing with the Titans too, and I don't remember what it was. I think sometimes you get up there and maybe you're not used to just speaking in front of folks or whatever, and you can get nervous doing that stuff.
Well, okay, how about this? Play Marcus's interview that you played earlier about his situation here with the Tennessee Titans on the way out. The question. I know you know where it's at because they were talking about it. And I was just stunned to hear his response on his experience here with the Titans and how.
Oh, this is from his availability with the Falcons?
No. No, I think this was an interview maybe a year or two ago.
This is when he got to Vegas.
Go for it.
Vegas, yeah.
Blaine and Mickey out.
We can't hear it.
Mariota now.
Okay.
Like, what do you think
Thank
the
you.
biggest difference is from you sitting here today than, say, 24 months ago?
Well, I look at it and I've learned a lot in terms of the business standpoint, but at the same time, I think I just learned about being myself. You know, I think so much of the expectations that I had in Tennessee kind of carved out somebody that I didn't want to be and somebody that I didn't really recognize. And to be able to see that now from a different vantage point and a different perspective, and to come here and just enjoy football again, enjoy being on the field, having fun with these guys, has made my life just a whole lot happier and just a lot more enjoyable. So, you know, taking that experience, I truly understand that was kind of part of my journey. Everyone's journey is a little different, and I can use that as I go forward, and we'll see what happens with my career.